Okay, I just want to make sure, can the people in the back hear us okay? Just wave your hands if you can. Good,
Okay,
good.
good,
Okay,
good.
thank you. Okay, my name is RickKarlin. I'm the arts and culture editor and the food and travel editor for Out South Florida newspaper and magazine. And I am also the author of 2 books, Last Call South Florida and Last Call Chicago, which are about the bars of the various cities. And I'm with ErikPiepenburg, who is writing about the dining of various cities in his book, Dining Out. And it's about, my book is about LGBT bars. His is about LGBT restaurants and what makes a gay restaurant. And so we're going to talk about his book tonight, or today, this morning or afternoon, whatever time it is. It's the day after Pride. I can't even remember what day it is or what time it is. But Erik, thank you for coming to Fort Lauderdale for this.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm very excited about your book, having been a food journalist and critic for 30 plus years, and the chronicling of what makes a gay restaurant. So let's start off with that. First of all, what are your qualifications for what makes a gay restaurant?
Yeah, well, thank you for talking to me, Rick. You're actually in my book.
Yes.
Because I came to Fort Lauderdale 2 years ago to spend some time here, and you were one of the people who I interviewed. So I appreciate your being a part of this book very much. But a gay restaurant, the way I define it, is a restaurant where mostly gay people are eating. And the reason I say that is because sometimes you have capital G gay restaurants. Those of you who remember places like Food Bar in New York City, Florent in New York, my beloved Melrose Diner in Chicago was really gay, depending on what time of day you went. And that's sort of an interesting characteristic, is that gay restaurants sometimes can be very gay. If you were to go to the Melrose at 3 a.m. after the bars on Halsted closed, it was very gay. But you were to go back there 9 a.m., 10 a.m. in the morning, and it would be less gay. It would be straight moms or people coming off of the overnight shift. And so that's an interesting characteristic about gay restaurants, because gay bars are generally understood to be gay from the time you open the door until you close the door. Like, this is a gay bar. Restaurants, not so much. They have a sort of temporal quality that can really change throughout the day. So that's sort of a long way of saying a gay restaurant is where when I open the door and I look around, all I see are gay people. It's just gay. Yeah.
Yes. And that's interesting, because using the Melrose as an example too, one of the things I think we talked about when we talked about the Melrose was that was where you went on Sunday morning with your trick from, if they were a good trick, you took them to the Melrose on Sunday morning so everybody could see how well you did on Sunday and Saturday night. And if they weren't a good trick, you gave them a cup of instant coffee and sent them on their way.
That's yes. I think that's a quote in my book, Rick. You actually said, if they weren't good, give them some Sanka and out the door.
Yes.
Yeah, and there are a lot of restaurants in my book. There's a whole chapter on diners, for example, which serve that purpose, because a lot of times diners are open 24 hours. They are, at least in my experience, are near the gay bars, gay restaurants. They're not usually that expensive. They serve everybody. Diners are really sort of an underappreciated type of gay restaurant.
Right.
And the Melrose was really the restaurant that sparked me to write this book, because I just have such wonderful memories of being there in the 90s when I lived in Boys Town, as we called it back then.
Yes.
That diner particularly meant so much to me, and I think diners have played that same role for a lot of gay people, I think.
Yes, and they were particularly welcoming to gay people at the Melrose when a lot of places weren't.
And not that you would see pride flags everywhere, they didn't have drag brunch. It wasn't that kind of welcoming. It was sort of understood that you are welcome here.
Yes.
We're in Boys Town, so...
Yeah, you could sit there in drag at 3 a.m. and, pick at your burger and fries.
Yeah.
And, or sit there the next morning at 8 in the morning having your omelet and picking the mascara off your lashes.
Right,
Still,
right.
that's the kind of place it was.
That's a gay restaurant.
That's a gay restaurant. And I had a friend that lived on Melrose, as you did, and that was his kitchen, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, he did not cook. He ate 3 meals a day at the Melrose. He would, I think he kept juice and poppers in his refrigerator, and that was about it.
That's it, yeah.
And beer, I think. That was about all he kept in his refrigerator. So, how did the idea for the book come about, besides just the Melrose?
Yeah, well, so when the Melrose closed, I sort of felt a real loss, weirdly, because you don't think about a restaurant in terms of a loss, but it kind of was that for me. And so in 2021, I wrote an article for the New York Times about what I thought would be the death of gay restaurants, because as someone who came out and came of age in the 90s, gay restaurants were a dime a dozen, no matter where you went. And I hadn't seen that in New York, where I live right now, and I thought, well, what's up with gay restaurants? What happened to them? And they are out there in number as they were back in the heyday of the 70s and 80s and the 90s, certainly. But they're still thriving, especially in other parts of the country where a gay restaurant is a kind of safe space. So based on that article, I said, you know what? I think for my first book, I've been a journalist for 20-some years. For my first book, I want to write about gay restaurants because they meant so much to me. And I know that they mean a lot to other people as well. And so that was kind of the spark that said, I'm going to turn this into a book. I also had, as a journalist, Rick, sometimes you have so much material for a story, so much reporting. I mean, this article could have been 10,000 words long. And so I thought, well, there's some meat here that I think I want to turn into a book. And so here we are 4 years later.
Right. And part of what you have to decide when you're doing this is what makes a gay restaurant a gay restaurant.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be gay owned. Most of the time they are not.
That's right. I wasn't concerned about, are they gay owned? Do they have a gay chef? Do they serve queer food? I really wasn't interested in those.
They don't have to serve quiche.
They don't have to serve quiche at all.
No. Yes.
I was less concerned about those types of questions and more concerned about who's eating there and why are they there. That was what I really wanted to focus on in the book.
Right. Because I should mention, we are doing this interview in Tropics in Wilton Manors, which is certainly a gay restaurant by any definition you could use. It is gay owned. It is filled with gay people. Well, we should say it is filled with gay men. I think there's one woman dining here currently, and it's gay men of a certain age. But it is almost consistently filled with gay people, and a few allies, I would say, and so that is certainly something.
Yeah, let me just say, when I came to Fort Lauderdale, this was the first restaurant that I went to. I sort of started at this end of Wilton Drive and sort of made my way down to Rosie's, I guess, is on the other end of town. And so this is the first restaurant that I came to, and I was just struck by it. It felt like one of the restaurants that you would see in the 90s, and I mean that as a compliment. I mean, this is a restaurant that really is it's a safe space. It's a comfort place. This is not a restaurant that's striving for Michelin stars or the hot new queer whatever, blah blah blah. This is just a restaurant that serves really good food that keeps people coming back. Yes, men of a certain age.
Yes.
I'm 54. I would say Gen X and older probably is what I saw here, and so I thought, no, this is how gay restaurants today are thriving. Are restaurants like Tropics and Wilton Manors. Right,
and for those that are viewing this video who are not familiar with Wilton Manors, Wilton Drive is about a 3/4 mile strip, and the south end of it is anchored by Tropics, and the north end is anchored by Rosie's, and all in between there are about 24 to 36 gay-owned bars and restaurants and gift shops, and that's completely that's about all that's on the Strip, except for City Hall, and nightclubs. Bars and nightclubs, same thing to me. Yes, and a few clothing stores, and that's about it. So,
well, can I just say it feels to me a little bit like Chelsea in the 90s or Boys Town in the 90s, where
Right.
you'd walk up Halsted Street from Belmont to Irving Park, for those of you who know Chicago, and there would just be gay store after gay restaurant, after gay coffee shop, after gay clothing store. And you walk through Chelsea today, or your Boys Town today, it's not like that. But in Wilton Manors, it still is. And that
Yes.
spirit of, I mean, I came out in the 90s, I came of gay age in the 90s. It has that feel still of, this is a gay neighborhood, which
Right.
you don't have certainly not in Chelsea the way it used to be.
Well, I grew up in Chicago, and Chicago's Halsted Strip is basically, from the 90s, is basically the exact same length and everything as Wilton Drive. So I felt like I never really moved. Yeah. And that's, I think, part of the reason I moved here is that it's very much the same. It was very comfortable. How long did it take you to put the book together?
It was about 4 years from start to finish. That included travel, that included research, that included eating at places. I went to probably about six or seven states. I talked to just scores of people, some on the phone, some in person, just ate at restaurants and just sort of started chatting to people to sort of learn about why they were there. And so it's about 4 years of research and writing, which I enjoyed every minute of it, because like I said, I love gay restaurants. So to me, this wasn't work. It didn't feel like work. It felt like, oh, this is something I'm passionate about. And I kind of almost wanted to keep going. I don't know if there'll be a second book, but I love this topic. And so this was not work to me at all.
What was your biggest surprise that you found out?
I think the biggest surprise was probably the extent to which gay restaurants, I make the case in the book, have been around longer than gay bars, at least by my definition. Because gay restaurants, if you think about it, gay people have been going out to meet each other in public for a very long time.
Right.
And so in the book, I go all the way back to a saloon in New York City in the late 1800s where Walt Whitman went. And if you think about it, if Walt Whitman was there with his lover, is that a gay restaurant? I mean, you could sort of say he sort of queered the space, as the kids would say today. Not a gay restaurant by, certainly our definition, but like where there are artists and gay identified people back then, it's kind of gay. And then you move to a place like the Automats in the 30s, which had a real heyday, and gay men cruised Automats under the radar of straight people. So is that a kind of a queering of a space? In the parlance of today? Yeah. And it wasn't until really sort of the 60s that we had gay restaurants with a capital G. But all that is to say, I think restaurants have been around, by my definition, a lot longer than gay bars, yet they're very underappreciated as gay spaces.
Right, and I mean, people make a big deal about the Stonewall Rebellion as the start of the gay rights movement, but actually the Compton cafeteria riots in California were before that. They just didn't keep the momentum up, what is really it. So they were part of that rebellion, but they just didn't keep up the momentum.
Well, what's interesting too is I sort of, as I was researching the book, there are Compton's, the Cooper Donuts in LA, sort of these sites of resistance. In my book, I actually sort of wonder if they actually happened exactly the way that we think that they did. That's not to say that they didn't. I don't know. I wasn't there.
Right.
But like these stories of what happened pre-Stonewall are absolutely essential to be talking about in terms of our history. In the case of Cooper Donuts, which is this sort of uprising in the late 50s in LA, I don't think it happened at all. So my book sort of questions some of these stories, these beautiful myths, as a historian, as the historian Lillian Faderman told me in the book. We create these beautiful myths to sort of understand our history, and those have real value. But yes, Stonewall did not begin the gay civil rights movement at all. Restaurants have been serving those purposes as bars did before.
Yes. Well, and also, as with Stonewall, if everybody who was at Stonewall, who says they were at Stonewall, was there, the place would have been bursting at the seams.
Yeah.
Because I can't tell you how many people that say I was there that night, and they weren't. I mean, there's no way they could have been. Yes,
that's right.
Yes. I made notes here for us to talk about, and I've talked about. I have tremors now. I can't read my notes. Okay. So,
well, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
You talked about. Do you have a gay restaurant that meant something to you, or that you have a real love for or passion for here, or in Chicago? Well,
I'm going to avoid saying anything here since I'm the food editor here at Out South Florida. But I will talk about Chicago, and one of my favorite restaurants, gay restaurants in Chicago, was Buddy's, which was a restaurant and bar. They had two separate rooms. The bar was one room, the restaurant was the other. And the person that was the manager was Michael Shamandel, and he had run many bars in Chicago. And he was the manager of the restaurant and the bar, Buddy's. And they had quite an interesting take on things. It was Southwest cuisine, and they did a salsa bar in the front window. So you would go up and you could have salsa and chips. Rather than bring them to your table, the chips were at your table, but you could go up and spoon salsa on a plate and take them to your table. And they were like, every day they would have 3 different salsas they would make up, whatever, and it was usually whatever Michael wanted to get out of the refrigerator became a salsa. And I loved it because I reviewed it first for the paper that I worked for then, which was Gay Chicago Magazine. And I was also a teacher, and I had the summers off, and I did not get paid during the summer. So he would hire me to work the summers to run their lunch crowd. And so it was kind of fun. I got to work the lunch crowd. I worked in the kitchen for the lunches, and then I created their Sunday brunch menu. And then every once in a while I would have to fill in as a waiter or something. And it was the kind of restaurant where you could be really campy and fun. And one time this one woman was just like sitting there, I'm saying, and what will you have? She said, I'll just have a bite. So I leaned over and bit her shoulder. And I got away with it.
That's what you can do in a gay restaurant, yes. I guess, yeah.
And I got a big tip for it.
I'm sure.
I don't think I could do that nowadays. That was, and one time I went to pick up the plate, and the steak knife went like this and landed right between the guy's legs and went into the upholstery. And I went, the bris is for free, and picked up the knife.
So you can get away with that.
Yes, gay restaurants. I love the camp factor in gay restaurants.
Well, to follow up on that too, something interesting that you said to me that is in the book too. The way that you review restaurants here. And have, in the past, yes, it's about the food. Is the food good? People want to know what's delicious, what's not, what you don't like, what you do like. But also just as important is, what is the vibe?
Right.
Is it flirty? Is it cruisy? Is it fine dining? Is it more casual?
Right.
That's just as much a part of your take on gay restaurants, is who's there and what does it feel like to be there, which you might not necessarily write about if it was a non-gay restaurant, but your readership wants to know what kind of a vibe is it.
Right, and my readership wants to know, if I go to even a straight restaurant, like, are the waiters cute?
Yeah.
That's the thing. I'll mention if our waiter was adorable, and cute and flirty, I'll mention that in the review. A straight restaurant reviewer is not going to mention that.
No, that's true.
And that will bring in our readership to that restaurant. And a lot of times that can turn a restaurant from a straight restaurant into a gay restaurant, especially down here in South Florida.
Do you hear from readers who are like, we want to know more about the waiters flirting?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah, and I know of a couple one restaurant that in particular, their I mentioned they had a very handsome waiter, and he was very attentive to gay tables, even though he was a straight waiter. And they had opened and they were struggling. And when my review ran, their business turned around completely. And it was because of him.
Yeah.
And everybody was going in requesting his table. So they hired his brother, who was cute and flirty too.
Wow.
And he ended up doing very well.
This is like community. You're really doing the community a service.
I guess
Rick,
so. I guess so.
I hope they appreciate you.
Yes. And he left the restaurant, and we don't know where he went, but they've since kept hiring cute flirty waiters.
Okay, well, that's smart.
So that was very smart of them.
Yep. Well, yeah. I mean, I guess I'm also just wondering what, if I can ask you, like, how would you characterize the sort of the gay dining scene here, Wilton Manors, Fort Lauderdale? Because I don't know it very well. So
well, I'll tell you, it turns over quite a bit.
Okay. Yeah. Since I've been here, Courtyard Cafe closed. Tie Me Up closed. Both of those are in my book, and they've closed since then.
Violets and Zens just closed.
Okay.
I mean, there's been one location that's been like 5 restaurants since we've been here.
Okay.
I've lived here 10 years. It's been 5 different restaurants. There's been one restaurant, one building it was one restaurant and it's been closed for 8 years and nobody's ever moved in there.
Okay.
And they just use the parking lot now as a city lot. So, it's very weird. And then there's restaurants. When we first came down here, everybody would go on Monday night to this one straight Mexican restaurant, and it was gay night there. And the reason it was gay night is it was $3 margaritas. But they did not like gay people there, and it was very obvious they did not like gay people there. And I was like, why do people go to this? And I mean, to the point where there were lines outside around the restaurant to get in. I think it's still like that. I haven't gone by, so I don't know.
It's just the cheap drinks?
The cheap drinks is what's getting them in there.
Yeah, it seems like if you open a restaurant or you have a restaurant in a gay neighborhood, you have 2 choices. You can welcome the gays and be like the Melrose did, please come, you are welcome here. Or you cannot, and you risk people not coming to your restaurant because you're known as not being a gay space.
Yes.
It seems like bad business to turn away the gays.
Yeah, I would think so, especially not only in Wilton Manors, but Fort Lauderdale in general. It's a very gay-friendly city, and there are a lot of straight-owned restaurants that try to appeal to us here.
Well, one of the things I think that I love about exploring this world is a place like, I don't know how long Tropics has been open, but it has that feel of what in the book I call legacy gay restaurants. These restaurants that have been open for decades. We're talking Annie's Paramount Steakhouse in Washington, D.C., Casita del Campo in Los Angeles, which has been open since the 60s. There's a place in Bridgeport, Connecticut called Bloodroot. We haven't talked about lesbian restaurants.
Yeah.
And Bloodroot is a feminist lesbian restaurant that opened in 1977. Vegetarian, very social justice minded, still open. And I think what a lot of these legacy gay restaurants have in common is, like I said before, they're not striving for James Beard Awards. These are restaurants that just serve really good food that they know that their regulars are going to come back for. They are welcoming of the LGBTQ umbrella wherever you are on that. And it seems like Tropics and other restaurants in Wilton Manor sort of follow that same idea of we're just going to serve really good food, keep our regulars happy, invite new people in. We're not going to try and reinvent the wheel here. But that's why they've, not all, but that's why the ones I write about in my book have stayed open. Do you think that's fair? Well,
I think that's fair. And I mean, Tropics now is under, I think, the 4th owner since I've lived here.
Okay.
And it's in my book as a bar because it's equally popular as a bar.
Yeah.
But part of the building used to be Wilton Manor City Hall, way back in the day. But the other thing is they keep things prices reasonable.
Yeah.
I think when Khan bought the place, he raised drink prices a quarter,
Okay.
and there was like almost a riot.
Yeah.
You know, but people have settled down and they've grown accustomed to drinking paying that price. But I mean, their happy hour prices, you could still get a glass of wine for $4.
Yeah,
I mean, it's the same thing. Hunter's in Chicago, he opened a Hunter's here and a Hunter's in Palm Springs.
Okay.
Still has the prices here are incredibly cheap for drinks.
Yeah, that's important.
And the same thing. If you offer reasonable prices, people will come.
Yeah.
Reasonable, good food at reasonable prices, people will come. Once you get beyond that, people won't come.
They won't come, yeah.
Because there are too many other options.
Especially older folks who maybe can't afford the $20 Cosmo and the $30 appetizer.
Well, and especially if you're a legacy restaurant, you have people that have been coming so long that they're used to paying.
Yeah.
You can raise your price a little bit, and to keep up with things.
Yeah.
But they remember when that dish was $4 and now it's $12.
Right.
And they sometimes forget that, yes, their Social Security check was $80 then, and now it's $480 or whatever.
Right.
You have to remind them of that sometimes.
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask you too, if I can.
We also want to, if there's any questions, we'd love to hear
if
some
you have some
too.
So Erik,
yes.
You mentioned real quickly my favorite restaurant in DC.
Yes, Annie's.
Yeah, you want to talk about that a little bit?
I'd love to. Annie's is the first chapter in my book. It really is what I call sort of the gay restaurant in this country. Annie's opened in 1948 in DuPont Circle. Started to become gay in the late 50s, early 60s when the Lavender Scare was sort of happening in DC. There was a lot of fear around being gay in the government. And Annie's, because of Annie Katinas herself, this gregarious sort of like mama bear woman would just like welcome her gays in. We're talking the late 50s, early 60s. And it became known as this place where you could be gay and no one would say anything to you, because if they did, Annie would be on your case. And so it has, she died a couple years ago, but her spirit sort of lives on. I was just there last week for a book event, and it is still one of the gayest restaurants you will find in this country. And pride flags everywhere. They just started a drag brunch. I mean, this is just capital G gay restaurant. In addition to a legacy gay restaurant, it's a destination gay restaurant, if you ask me. It's the kind of place that everyone should experience what it's like to eat at Annie's. I went to school in DC in the 90s, and it was the place that was open 24 hours on the weekends. We'd go clubbing at Tracks, this big nightclub, and then I'd head back to DuPont Circle and have pancakes at 3 a.m. with just nothing but drunk, flirty gay men in that dining room. And I have such wonderful memories of that time. And that place hasn't changed all that much. And I think it's a really special
Is that the place where, if I'm remembering from the book, where two men were holding hands underneath the table, and she went by and she said, "You can do that on top of the table." It put a lump in my throat when I read that.
Me too. That's a story that has long been associated with Annie herself, and so that's what you can do at a gay restaurant: is you can hold your partner's hand and no one's going to say anything, and if they do, look out. Because someone will be after them. So that's a great story that I love about Annie herself. I wish there were more Annies out in the world, because she was very special. I think my next book might be Mama Bear women who work at restaurants. You know the type. She's just no nonsense. Don't mess with me and my gay boys. There's a restaurant in Milwaukee in the 70s that was a restaurant and a laundromat. And there was a server there named Dirty Helen, who she's not in my book, but I think I might want to write a book about Dirty Helen, because she was one of the potty mouth, loved her gay boys, and that's a type that I think is out there that I'm kind of fascinated.
You know who you have to put in that is Dorothy, the earring lady.
I don't know who's Dorothy.
She was
the earring lady?
a waitress at the Melrose.
Is that right?
She had
Okay.
all the wacky earrings all the time, and then
Yep.
she was a waitress around a bunch of places in Chicago, but she loved the gay boys, and she would wear these wacky earrings, and then the gay boys started buying her wacky earrings.
Oh, that's great.
She had a collection of like 800,
Amazing.
and then right after my husband and I got together like 30 years ago, we went up with his family to this like resort in Wisconsin for some family getaway, and she had retired and she was up there working as a hostess.
Wow.
And she was so shocked to see us still wearing her wacky earrings.
That's great. Yeah, that is a fascinating type of person.
Yes.
You see it at gay restaurants. So yeah, maybe that's my next book.
Alan.
Yeah, yes, I got questions here.
So, I'm publisher of Fun Maps.
Yeah.
And I've been all over the country and in Canada as well. And wherever there is a gay mecca, there's a good gay restaurant. I've eaten in many of the ones that you're talking about, almost all of them. And you've got the choices. In Provincetown, you might think of Bayside Betsy's. And in Key West, La Tida. And those are just two that pop out from you.
Yeah, I would love to have gone to so many more places in my book. I think this could have been a 10,000 page book about gay restaurants, and there are so many that I love hearing that from people who say, oh, wait a minute, have you ever heard of this restaurant? And most of the times, no, I've never heard of that, which is so exciting to me that there's a whole world out there that I think of gay restaurants that I think would explore.
Come alive.
I'm so glad that makes me very happy to hear that.
What was a gay restaurant that was in a place? I mean, it's one thing to find a gay restaurant in Wilton Manors, Provincetown, Key West. Where was the most unexpected place to find a gay restaurant?
Yeah, there's a restaurant that I write about. I have a little chapter on it called Nepalese Lounge and Grille, which does not serve food from Nepal, just to be clear. That's just what it's called. And they call it Naps in Green Bay. I'd never been to Green Bay, Wisconsin before. But I went there because every once a month they have a trans mixer there where trans people from all over the Midwest, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Illinois, go to Naps once a month, and it was so exciting to be there to see these trans men and women who you can't do that in Oshkosh,
right.
But you can go to this one bar restaurant just one time a month and you can be your true trans self. And I think that was just sort of all places, Green Bay, in this tiny little bar, kind of in this quiet block, just became this trans universe. And it was really sort of inspiring and sort of reminded me of what it was like for me to be, eating at these restaurants in the 90s when, things were, not great. AIDS was still sort of, very much a part of the gay world, and to think that this is our space. This is where we can be with each other in safety. To see that in Green Bay, Wisconsin was just sort of delightful. I really, really enjoyed my time at Naps.
Do you know how that came about? Did the whole event?
Yeah, there's the trans woman who runs it. Her name is Martha. She's fantastic. She was in the kind of a higher up in the Catholic diocese for many years. She met Pope Francis before he died as a trans woman. I mean, she's kind of like this big deal in terms of trans people who are Catholic. And she just said to the owner of Naps, this guy named Butch, she said, Butch, can we have this room just for one day a month? We'll serve cheese curds, Wisconsin cheese curds. We'll have some beer. And it started off with maybe 10 or so people, and now she has about 400 people on her list. And so it really is because this one trans woman said, can we take over this bar? And it has just blossomed. And it just shows the power of what one person can do, especially for trans people right now who are, not having a great time in this country,
right.
Especially trans people in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
So it's really, she's a very impactful person.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
What do you find about the acceptance of women in male-dominated restaurants and vice versa?
That's a great question about the acceptance of women. I mean, I remember going in the 90s when I'd go out, in New York, Chicago, it was mostly gay men had their spaces, lesbians had their spaces, and never the twain would meet. And that was fine. Lesbians didn't want to go to gay restaurants. Gay men didn't want to go to lesbian restaurants. And now, I think, in our queer sort of today, everything is everybody's sort of welcome. Some people don't like that. I think there's a lot of men maybe a little older who are like, no, I want this to be if you think about the Eagle, last time I was at the Eagle in New York, there were a lot of women there, and I think, you talk to some old timers, the Eagle was a space for men. You couldn't wear, cologne, you had to look a certain way. That's just sort of changed completely. And so I think today, in a lot of places, there is that sort of separateness of this is a women's restaurant, this is a men's restaurant. That's kind of gone. Like it or not, that's kind of just the way it is. However, in a town like Green Bay, if you kind of have that one restaurant, everybody goes there. Lesbians, gay men, trans people, allies, it's just because that's where everybody just goes. So you are mixed, you are in mixed company, just because that's where everybody goes. And you don't have much of a choice. So that's the place where you have to go.
Yeah, like in the old movies, you would see a gay bar and there'd be a drag queen, a leather guy, a dyke, and everything. Well, that's because in the old bars in small towns, you had everybody at that bar because that they had one place to go.
Right.
It's before we became boutique bars and specialized bars.
That's right.
And restaurants. And so I think it's the same thing. But well, that's very interesting that and I think the restaurants were always different because you had to kind of, even in big cities where you could be a little bit more separatist, I think even in restaurants, you expected people to come in. There was a restaurant in Chicago called, what was the name of it? It was way up north in the city, and it was kind of a crunchy granola restaurant thing, but it was always like hippie-ish, but it was mostly women.
Yeah.
But like when I would go on a first date with a gay man, I would always go there because it was okay to be open, but there wasn't going to be any guy cruising your date.
Right.
That's why I would go there on a first date with a man.
Very smart. Yes. All right.
So, in the world of gay bars, I've noticed that there are some that tend to be kind of almost like chains or franchises, where you see multiples of the same format in different parts of the country. Have you noticed that in the restaurant business at all? Have you seen, and I can think of a couple, but have you seen any preponderance of multiple locations of the same gay restaurant in different cities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say not really. I mean, for the most part, other than Hamburger Mary's, which debatable how gay Hamburger Mary's is anymore. I went to Hamburger Mary's in West Hollywood, of all places, and I think I was the only gay guy there. It was mostly like straight women. There was a drag queen, but it just didn't feel gay to me, which was strange because Hamburger Mary's opened in San Francisco in the 70s when it was like super, super gay. It was by the bars. And so to think that Hamburger Mary's, which has several locations across the country, I think in Florida, I think there's a Hamburger Mary's in Florida.
Jacksonville.
Okay.
Daytona, yeah.
I mean, I think what's interesting about Hamburger Mary's is that there are multiple locations, but are they that gay anymore? I don't know. I'm not so, at least by my definition, I'm not.
And there's one
sure.
opening in Chicago now. Again.
Yeah,
they
that's
closed
right.
one and now they're opening one again.
If it's mostly like straight women there during drag brunch, is that a gay restaurant?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. So I actually talk about that in my book. I say I don't I don't. To me, it doesn't look like a gay restaurant.
Yeah.
Yet it's a restaurant that's so like embedded in the ethos of Hamburger Mary's is just sort of drag and gayness and that sort of San Francisco in the 70s vibe. That's gone now. So I don't know if that's a gay restaurant.
It's one of those iconic legacy things where it opened the door for places like Lips and Aquaplex and other restaurants.
Yeah.
Hamburger Mary's was the first.
Yeah.
But it has somehow switched its appeal to, bridal parties,
Yeah.
wedding shower things. And
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
Another thing about Hamburger Mary's is that when your straight friends come to town, you got to take them someplace
Yeah.
that they will feel like they're in a gay place,
Yeah.
but still comfortable.
Yes.
Yeah.
People are still comfortable there.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Would part of it also be that the Hamburger Mary's franchise fell apart?
Yeah, there were some problems with Hamburger Mary's, and I think some locations have certainly closed since it started. Yeah, Hamburger Mary's is it's a fascinating sort of example of the ways in which gay dining has sort of became mainstream in a lot of ways. Like it or not, that's just kind of the way that it is. But I did see that they're opening in Chicago, so they're still doing their thing.
Which is interesting because, the Hamburger Mary's franchise has kind of fallen apart.
Yeah.
And then the guys in Chicago who own the franchise there, theirs was very successful and they bought the entire business.
Yeah.
And then they opened one down here. They bought into the West Hollywood franchise and they own the franchise that opened here, the second one, and that one failed.
Okay.
And then they sold that and it just went out completely. And now they're opening one in Chicago. So I don't know
And they
what the thing
recently
is.
opened one in Dallas within the last 18 months.
And then there's the Well, which is the Toronto franchise of bars, which is here now. So
They're doing
It's not a
something.
franchise.
No,
it's all owned by one guy. Yeah,
John Ribson.
yeah,
And I think this is his 8th or 9th location.
yeah,
All the other ones are in Ontario.
yeah.
And Lips was a good example too. Lips, which is still in New York, still having drag brunch, that had a couple of locations. They've since closed, but there was a sense that at the time when drag brunch is a thing, we got to open more Lips locations, and it was not necessarily easy to replicate in other parts of the country. But Hamburger Mary's is still they're doing their thing. So props to them. Yeah.
And is what was the Asian one that started at night? It was New York.
Oh, Lucky Chang's.
Lucky Chang's.
Yeah.
They opened 2 in Miami, and those
Yeah.
didn't work.
Yeah, there's one. They're still in New York.
They're still in
doing,
New York, and
but-
it's working.
Yeah, I went to.
It's touristy though.
It's touristy. They do drag brunch. Props to Lucky Chang's. They've been open since the 90s. Look, anytime drag queens get work, I support that 100%. But it's very different from what it was back in the 90s when no one had heard of drag queen servers who were all Asian. What's happening? And so now it's that we take that for granted, but back then it was something that New York had really never seen before. So I love Lucky Chang's. They're still doing their thing. I'm very happy for them.
So you live in New York.
Yes.
What is your favorite place in New York?
That's a great question. I think all of my favorites are long gone. So I think right now, if I have a favorite in New York, it would probably, there's two. There are two very different restaurants. One is called Hags, which is a fine dining restaurant. Definitely a little more expensive than other restaurants, although they have a pay what you can Sundays, which is the queerest night of the week. Very popular. You can pay $5 and get a gourmet meal. I love what Hags is doing. On the flip side, those of you who know Chelsea, there's a diner there called Chelsea Cottage at the corner of 9th Avenue and 23rd Street, which is just an old school diner that's been around forever. Very gay, sometimes the day, sometimes not. I'm a diner gay, so I would love to go there and just have my grilled cheese and rice pudding, and that's that's the kind of gourmand that I am. So I would say any of the remaining gay diners in Chelsea those are my go-to spaces.
Yes.
So,
Have you gone to the Pink Teacup?
no, that's in my book, but no, I haven't gone there. That's all. Yeah, Pink Teacup is pretty legendary as well. So is Arriba. Those of you who know Manhattan, it's a Mexican restaurant, open since 1984. Still doing their thing. If you go there on a Monday night when Broadway is dark, all the Broadway chorus boys are there and they're flirty and cheap drinks and enchiladas to just soak it all up. It's kind of a scene, and I love that.
The Pink Teacup is older than that.
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes.
Thank you for your talk, and I'm looking forward to reading your book.
Thank you.
My question is more about like how you research the restaurants. Like remember how there used to be all those Damron guides
Yeah.
and all that, and like I know somebody who's trying to do this project, like geolocate where all those restaurants were, all the establishments. Were.
Yeah.
And so like I know you didn't avail yourself of those guides probably because they're not published anymore. So how did you find the restaurants that you were going to talk about, and then how did you finally decide the ones you were going to include in the
Yeah.
book?
Yeah, I went to a lot of archives, including here in Fort Lauderdale, the Stonewall, which was just really fantastic. Just in Atlanta, in DC, in Cleveland, where I'm from.
This Robert from Stonewall
Yes, thank you.
Archive.
The Stonewall Archive was just a real fantastic resource. And a lot of these archives have the Damron guides, and so I was able to search those, but they also had obscure newsletters that were just like Xeroxed back in the day that said they were for motorcycle clubs and they were for the leather community, and they just have all these guides and newspapers, long gone gay newspapers that would advertise gay restaurants. And I would just look through the old issues of all of these, the guides, the newspapers, the Xeroxed
As did
zines, as did Rick, and that's how you find out. As did we all. There's no better resource than an old gay newspaper that said, here's the dining section, maybe sometimes here's reviews. In Philadelphia, they had gay restaurant awards in the 70s. And so I can't tell you how much time I spent just reading old gay newspapers to see where everybody used to eat. It was just, I could get lost in those old publications. And now everything's on Instagram and social media, and it's just a different world right now, which is great.
For new stuff, but for the old stuff,
But
you
the
have
old
to go.
stuff, yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
of course you had to avail yourself of the internet and all that.
Yeah.
Right? So how did you ultimately pick up the ones you'd included? Because you can't put all the restaurants in one book.
Yeah,
I
and
noticed your book is over 300 pages. It's a big book.
yes. No, I just chose the ones that I was able. In some cases, I'll be honest, there were some ads that were very provocative, and that sort of piqued my interest. There was an ad for a restaurant in West Hollywood called the Yukon Mining Company back in the 80s that had like a Falcon. Those of you who know Falcon Studios, big muscle guy who looked like a miner with overalls and his hairy chest and everything. That was a menu cover. And then they had ads for this place, and of course I thought, well, what kind of a restaurant would have this like porn star looking guy on the menu cover? So that piqued my interest. Also, if there was a review of a gay restaurant, I would look into it then. And it just sort of took me down rabbit holes of like where did people eat? Mostly through newspapers that covered the gay restaurant scene. Yeah.
Yeah, so just to show you, my books are on the bar. So I did,
I have your book.
okay. So all of these, all these pictures are all things I found in the archives.
Yeah.
At Stonewall.
At Stonewall, yes.
And also Art too. I just got to shout out to Art. Gabe Archives was a
Yes.
tremendous resource for me.
Yes.
Just meeting people who used to eat at Gallus in Atlanta, who used to eat at restaurants in LA. Just Art connected me to all these people. It's great to read a newspaper article, but it's even better to talk to someone who was there and could tell you,
Yes.
what did it smell like? What did it look like? What happened that one night that there was a fight at the bar? Like those kinds of juicy stories really just, you can't beat talking to someone who was actually there. So anyway, well, I think we'll wrap.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you very
unless
much.
there's any other questions, I think we'll wrap.
If anybody watching this video wants to know where to get either of your books, yours or his, where should they go?
Yeah, I'll just say you can go to my website. It's ErikPiepenburg.com, and you can get links to all of my to my books through any online bookseller. So that's me.
Mine, you can get them at RickKarlin.com. That's RickKarlin.com. Or my press, rattlinggoodyarns.com. Also, I've just gone out of my mind. There's some website is doing some 20% off for Pride, and I can't remember the name of it
I think
now.
bookshop.org.
Bookshop.org, that's it, is doing them for my books. And again, available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. I have Last Call Chicago and Last Call South Florida. I'm working on Last Call Boston right now. So.
That's great.
Last
Thank you.
call, Beantown.
Beantown, yes.
Well, thank you,
very
everyone. I
much.
appreciate it.
Thank you,
for
Eric.
being here. Thank you. And thank you, Rick.
Thank you.